The last time I visited Ted, I took a bus from here in Tacoma, Washington, clear across the country to Florida to go see him by myself. The visiting room was all black and dark, and he wasn't showing his face. It felt weird. I never asked Ted if he killed those women. I was just so confused, still believing that he was innocent. You know, what can you do when you're 17? You know, I can't wave a magic wand and make all this go away.
This is a tape-recorded interview between Bob Keppel and Ted Bundy.
We have almost 24 young women dead, the victims of the Green River Killer.
The whole premise was using one killer to catch another killer. It had never been done before. And that became the Silence of the Lambs.
Do you think there's something that we can do to draw him out of the woodwork?
Yes, I have an idea or two that might help you with passion. There are an infinite number of ways to explain how a man can come to the point where he destroys human life.
The girl's head was severed and taken up the road.
Less than 6 hours from now, accused mass murderer Ted Bundy is scheduled to be executed in a Florida prison.
I'm the only one in possession of this information. That's just the way it is. It's now or never.
The latest attempts to spare Bundy from Florida's electric chair ran their legal course when the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear his case.
Mr. Bundy has had his days in court. I think it's time that the legitimate verdict of the state trial court is carried out.
Serial killer Ted Bundy is set to die in Florida's electric chair on Tuesday morning.
The clock on Bundy's life ticked down. He and his lawyers launched last-ditch appeals to the governor of Florida and the U.S. Supreme Court asking for a stay of execution.
He says, if I confess to a case and you take me back into court and find me guilty, look at the closure you give to the families and I get to stay alive.
That's when Ted called me back, just 2 months after our last meeting.
There were 4 states invited to come down. Investigators from Colorado, Utah, Idaho, and Washington. They thought that he killed between 20 to 100 women. And so Ted's trying to extend his life. And he's going to say enough that they're going to go back and say, hey, give him another 90 days. I had to interview Ted several times, so Ted wanted me to be there. And Bob was the first one to interview him. Keppel was a key person in his case.
Bundy had groomed me to be his confessor under the cover of solving the Green River murders. But the Green River case was now ice cold. Dave Reichert was the only investigator who believed it would be solved.
You know, the years go on. We started hearing rumblings of cutbacks as early as 1986. After all that hard work, I never had a thought that we weren't going to catch him. I just wondered how, when, and where.
But the Riverman would have to wait. I was face to face with Bundy again, and only had a single 2-hour meeting to get him to confess to the 8 murders in Washington state. In my first 20 minutes with Ted, his lawyer, and Bill Hagmeyer, he was stalling. I ignored it and pressed him for details.
Have we got the time frame down and when things started in Washington?
74.
1974. Okay. So the order of things are kind of like Ely, Manson, Rancourt, Ball, Hawkins, Manson, plus Park.
That's right. Yeah. Earlier today, it was made known to me that it would be in my best interest to talk about specifics to show my good faith. Let's just do one here. I mean, let's start. I understand that at the Issaquah site, remains of 3 individuals found, 2 identified and 1 not. Okay. What do you want? Description of the site first?
Yes.
Well, the old Highway 90, there's a creek down in the ravine between 90 and the side road. There's another little dirt road that went up the hill, across some railroad tracks. Just on the other side of the railroad tracks, about 20 yards up, there's a little grassy area. And some scrub growth, old alders. Dirt road went up the hill maybe half a mile. Also maybe 50 yards to the east, down into another ravine was an old abandoned cabin. Ring a bell?
I was breathless. After years of dodging questions, Ted was finally describing his killing grounds as only the murderer could. But just as soon as he opened up, he shut down again. He was nervous about the corrections officers in the room. Ted wanted control over who heard his confession.
Portion of it remains.
The unidentified remains. This is where the presence of the officers down here is a little bit unnerving. Or I can whisper it to you or whatever. I'll just write the name down for you. The name that I just wrote down was Georgeann Hawkins.
I was stunned. The infamous Ted Bundy was confessing to murder in the first person for the first time.
Georgeann Hawkins was an undergraduate at University of Washington. One of the sweetest young college students you would ever see.
Georgeann Hawkins was last seen Monday evening shortly after midnight. She had been visiting at the Beta House and was returning to her house just a half block away down this alley.
Being conscientious, she left early because she wanted to study for her Spanish test. Several students remember seeing her. One of them watched her to within 40 feet of the door of her sorority house, Kappa Alpha Theta, and that was the last she was seen.
Go up the road. Keep going. Right about there, more or less, in and about 10 yards.
Ted showed us where he had taken Georgeann Hawkins, but then he started looking over his shoulder again.
This is where I get a little bit antsy. Some of this stuff, it gets pretty tough. I can whisper it.
And try that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can you hear that?
I can hear that.
Okay. The Hawkins girl's head was severed and taken up the road about 25 to 50 yards and buried in a location about 10 yards west of the road on a rocky hillside. Did you hear that?
How could I not? I was shocked. It was confirmation that Ted had decapitated his victims. What Bundy said next was even more disturbing.
Did you say that word again?
Hacksaw.
A hacksaw. It turned my stomach. But I pressed on, encouraging Ted to take me through the Georgeann Hawkins murder step by step.
Thursday night, 12 o'clock. I was in the alleyway behind the sorority and fraternity houses using a briefcase and some crutches. And a young woman walked down. I asked her to help me carry the briefcase. Then we walked back up the alley. And basically when I reached the car, I knocked her unconscious with a crowbar. I handcuffed her and put her in the passenger side of the car.
His words were a revelation to me. I could hardly believe what I was hearing.
Went to the freeway. Went across the bridge. Up the hill. Down the road and up to the grassy area.
Was she alive or dead?
She was very much alive.
What happened next?
I took the handcuffs off and strangled her. And drug her about 10 yards into the small grove of trees.
What is wrong with
Cord. An old piece of rope.
He was a strangler. He enjoyed killing people. He said, I didn't go after old ladies. I don't go after prostitutes like the Green River guy did. I found my prey. I wanted them to be educated. I wanted them to be worthy.
They were.
Then I packed the car up. By this time, it was almost dawn. And I went down the road, throwing everything out the window. I was in a sheer state of panic, of just absolute horror. But I just had to get every reminder of that incident out of the car. The robe, the clothes, shoes, the briefcase, and the crutches and the crowbar, everything. The handcuffs, everything.
In our 1984 interview, I suspected Bundy was talking about himself when he suggested this was how the Riverman disposed of evidence. And now Ted confirmed it.
Bundy doesn't want to be caught, but the possibility of it is part of the heightened sense of it that's highly titillating.
When did you remove your clothing?
After we got out of the car. I skipped over some stuff there. It's just too hard for me to talk about right now.
Bundy was obviously withholding the goriest details until he and his lawyers were able to delay his execution.
You remember what clothes she was wearing?
Pair of white patent leather clogs, blue slacks, a shirt tied in a knot.
Bingo. Ted had just confirmed his story by describing her clothing. Still, I needed more.
Is there something you can tell me about her that probably only you know and we know?
Well, then I took her out of the car and she was quite lucid, talking about things. It's funny, it's funny, but it's odd, the kinds of things people will say under those circumstances.
He chuckles with Keppel and actually says, I find it kind of funny. I mean, it's inhuman. He had a complete lack of conscience.
She said that she had a Spanish test the next day, and she thought that I had taken her to help tutor me for a Spanish test.
Georgeann's friends had told police she'd left the party to study for a Spanish test. It was the last piece I needed.
How about going back to it?
Well, I went back the next day, and I went back about 3 days later to do that business that we talked about earlier. And went up the roadway with it. It was sort of a crude attempt to disguise the identity. And then maybe about a week later, I went back for a third time.
I didn't believe that Ted was returning to the scene just to bury Georgeann's skull.
Were you going back to that scene to commit that?
There's a lot of psychological stuff going on here. Possessiveness, fascination with that, necrophilia, all that. But I don't want to talk about that right now.
Bundy refused to discuss necrophilia. Why? Bundy was trying to humanize himself. He wanted others to postpone his execution. And if he described what he did post-mortem to the victims, it would make him seem extremely deviant and certainly not somebody they want to keep around for an extended period of time.
He's ashamed. I mean, ashamed of the fact that the real center of yourself is this desperate need to have sex with the dead, because that's how you exercise your power. It's the one thing he can't control.
Ted had said enough to confirm that not only was he a chicken who cold-cocked his victims before strangling them, he was also a necrophiliac. I only had 45 minutes left to get the other 7 confessions. I had to be quick and thorough. I asked him where we could find the rest of Georgeann Hawkins' remains.
Down where the others were.
Down where the others were. Those words changed everything. Bundy didn't realize it, but he had just admitted to 2 more murders. Janice Ott and Denise Naslund, who disappeared from Lake Sammamish in 1974.
It was brazen to take 2 women off the beach. Bundy got one, and then he came back and got the other one. And then at Issaquah, we recovered the skeletal remains of Janice Ott and the skulls of Denise Naslund And the other one, who we now knew through Bundy's confession, was Georgeann Hawkins.
When Ted told me Georgeann's body was down where the others were, he had tied Hawkins' remains to Ott and Naslin's, also found in Issaquah.
Were similar things done to Ott and Naslin?
This is Hawkins' girl. Certainly not as extensive in those two instances.
Ted had just admitted he murdered Ott and Naslin, but I needed more. I needed facts.
How about Janice Ott's bicycle? You never found Ott's bicycle.
Going back, see that? It's below 24th in the armory.
Mm-hmm.
This little roadway snakes around, was concealed with leaves.
How about her backpack?
You know the Japanese tea cart?
Yes.
It's above that, somewhere below that road, but above that tea cart.
Ted indicated on the map where he hid Janice's bike and knapsack. This and his admission he killed both girls would be enough to close their cases. After years of hunting Ted Bundy, I finally got 3 confessions from him. But with only 20 minutes left and 5 confessions remaining, Bundy stalled again.
How about Donna Manson? You want to talk about that one?
No. There's just no way it can be done in this amount of time. Put your heads together with these other law enforcement people and think of any way. We need 60, 90 days going over with everybody, get it all down.
He's working them. You meet with the governor, meet with this person, meet with that person. I need time to help the families and to help science. And it was just trying to help himself to postpone his execution.
Think about what we've done here today and what's left to do. We're out of time.
Officials say that Bundy spent the day confessing to unsolved murders in the state of Washington.
By Saturday, the news had broken that Bundy was confessing to me. I was infuriated when his lawyers told the media that he was totally honest and cooperative.
When Ted started confessing, I realized that he really had done all those murders. The only thing I kept obsessing about was the mothers of those children who lost their daughters, you know, who could have had really fulfilling lives, you know. That is eternal.
She was everything to me. And as far as I'm concerned, Ted Bundy took it all.
You left behind people to have to live with that, and that killed them inside. He was a scumbag piece of...
Governor Bob Martinez has already indicated that he wants the execution to take place.
We have every intention of carrying out the death warrant at 7 a.m. on Tuesday, January 24th.
At this point, all I could do was hope for one more chance to talk with Bundy. Bill Hagmeyer was pressuring Bundy to give me more time.
I figured Bob would have the best shot of anybody, and Bundy said he'd do it as a favor to me.
It was Sunday night. Ted had agreed to speak with each of the 4 state investigators for 30 minutes apiece, starting with me. It was my last chance to get him to confess to the 5 remaining Washington murders.
How many people you figure have buried?
A couple, just a couple.
How about the Evergreen College group?
Oh yeah, in early '74. I mean, that night is very nightmarish, and the I had trouble piecing it together.
The Evergreen College girl was Donna Manson. The clock was ticking, louder with every passing second. Could I get Bundy to tell me what happened to her?
One of the students at Evergreen, Donna Gail Manson, she was 19 years old, went to a dance on campus, never arrived, was never seen again.
Donna Manson, she was more of a free spirit. She wrote poetry, she was interested in weaving, and when she went missing, her friends thought, oh, well, that's just Donna, she's just taking off. But 5 days later, her mother said, I knew that Donna wasn't coming back.
We never found a location of Donna Manson. And we've never found the rest of Taylor Mountain either. Just skull. How about Donna Manson? Where's she?
She's up in the mountains, up in the Cascades. Went to the infamous Taylor Mountain Road.
She's actually buried in the ground.
It was by the infamous power lines.
Bundy had just told us we could find Donna Manson's remains at Taylor Mountain, which was part of the Cascade Mountains. It's also where we found the skulls of Linda Healy, Susan Rancourt, Kathleen Parks, and Brenda Ball in 1975.
She dumped down on the power line road too?
Yeah.
How far up? Did you go by the gate?
It was just part of the road. Inside a tree cover.
Those are right when we found it.
Ted was pointing to nearby sites where we discovered the skulls of the 4 other young women. That tied Donna Manson and Bundy to Healy, Rancourt, Parks, and Ball.
Part where it's buried up in there, but the skull, it wouldn't be there.
Where is it?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
I never want to tell this. I promise myself I never tell this because it would.
Tell me about it. Come on, partner. These are things I don't know about you.
At one point, he called him partner. Come on, partner, tell me what. That's very good. Trying to ally yourself with him so that you and he are both working on a case together.
What the hell happened?
Well, it was incinerated. It was incinerated.
Where'd you incinerate it?
It's the most bizarre thing I've ever been associated with. I've been associated with poor Liz.
Mm-hmm.
In her fireplace. That house.
Burned it all up?
Down to the last ash, and then in a fit of paranoia and cleanliness, whatever, you just vacuumed out all the ashes.
Bundy had just confessed to decapitating Donna Manson and then burning her skull in his girlfriend Liz Klepfer's fireplace. After 15 years of searching for the missing pieces of the Ted Bundy puzzle, it was almost too much to comprehend.
Keppel wanted to understand what is the psychology of a serial killer. And the more he talked with Bundy, the more he kind of learned how to draw him out, which is how we know that Donna Gail Manson was an early Ted Bundy victim. He got Ted to admit to it.
Did you ever keep anything in your refrigerator?
No.
No body parts refrigerator.
No.
I knew that was.
I asked Bob if he ever found out why we just found skulls at Taylor Mountain. And he said the reason was that Bundy kept the skulls in his freezer for necrophilia. And occasionally Bundy would take them out and use them. Then he threw them out at Taylor Mountain.
Hagmeyer had told me that Bundy once admitted he had 4 heads at home with him at one time. They must have been the Taylor Mountain women.
I remember just being shocked that Bundy was that sick and that evil.
You can give me a hint where the rest of those bodies are?
I don't know.
Bundy had shut down again. Suddenly, my 30 minutes with him were almost up. This was my last chance. Where were the remains of those Taylor Mountain women?
You know, I'd like to know where the Taylor Mountain bodies were placed. Were these heads severed?
Yeah.
Were they dumped there?
I doubt it. They're very, very little creatures out there. Most of us to just chew them up.
I had run out of time. And as Ted waited for the Supreme Court's final judgment, he still refused to say where he buried the bodies of Heaney, Rancourt, Parks, and Ball.
In a couple months, I will tell you and your fellow law enforcement officers everything I can to locate the remains of a number of people.
At this point, there was nothing I could or would do to save Ted.
Time is the problem. As a police officer, I have to assume that you're going to die, too.
I know.
I'd like to ask one last question. When and where was your first murder?
We'll have to do that some other time. There's another time.
He clicked the tape recorder off and handed it back to me. Knowing I would never see him again, it was time for at least one moment of honesty. I told him that he had orchestrated the past few days very poorly. You just killed yourself, I said. That was the last thing I ever said to Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy confessed to investigator Bob Keppel that he committed at least 8 murders in Washington state.
We were elated that he had finally admitted to those murders. Bob did a great job.
Dad would have liked to get his hands around his neck, probably. But I think that he got what he wanted in the end, which was for Bundy to just admit that he'd done it.
Bundy's confessions weren't perfect, but he had given me enough. I was confident I would finally be able to close the 8 Washington cases in the months ahead and give the families some peace.
We knew in our hearts that he would be connected to her. Losing a child is like losing a part of yourself. You can't replace it with drugs or drink or any number of things. It's gone.
If a person is a menace to society, they ought to be exterminated. That's how I feel about it. I'd love to see him suffer is what I'd really like to see.
The death penalty was necessary because he has to be stopped. Just like you would put down a rabid dog.
The Supreme Court has turned down his last appeal, making this almost surely the last night of Ted Bundy's life.
In the end, Ted's strategy of trading information for more time was always doomed to fail. As the U.S. Supreme Court said, the world had had enough of Ted Bundy.
Court said, there's nothing more to be gained. He's confessed to the crimes. Carry out the sentence.
The once smirking killer is now reported sobbing and scared to death.
FBI profiler Bill Hagmaier had a special rapport with Ted. Bundy asked Bill to sit with him on death watch.
There's always a death watch because some people do commit suicide the night before. I was doing my job. It's kind of awkward sometimes, but I tend to believe that people can show people dignity whether they deserve it or not.
The death watch continues tonight outside the state prison at Stark, Florida.
It's time for him to go, and I want him gone.
He should die at 7 o'clock and not a minute later.
He asked, where should I get buried? So we went through that. At one point, he says, I can't go in there. I told him that it has to happen. And he says, well, I'm not going to give the governor or anybody else the satisfaction of watching me cry into that chair.
I think what bothered him is he couldn't talk himself out of anything at that point. He was not in control, and that enraged him.
I said, you have to do it. And he pulled a pen out, and he put it up against his artery. He said, I push this in here, blood will shoot at least 14 feet. You're going to have it all over your face, and I'll be dead before you can get the guard here. It was a bad situation. I mean, it was very difficult. He's looking at the clock, and he knew that he was going to die. He says, I'm not going to sit in that chair.
A lot of serial killers will commit suicide in prison just so they are in control of when they die. That's like their last-ditch effort to be on top.
I just stared at him, and I said, a little while ago, you took the Bible and were reading it and saying prayers. What is it you wanted in there? And he said, I want to know if I have a chance for another life. And I said, you asked God for forgiveness, and you just told me you killed over 30 people. You think you're in a situation where you can add another homicide? He said, no, it's suicide. I said, suicide is a murder. And he goes, you're right. I just can't, I'm just afraid. But, you know, you've been my best friend. And of course, that kind of makes you throw up a little bit as much as it does makes you feel good that you've been able to get through to him.
Hagmaier left a melancholy Ted Bundy alone in his cell. Outside the prison walls, the mood was very different.
Hundreds of people lined up outside the prison at Stark, Florida, some carrying signs cheering on the execution. Bundy did speak with his mother by telephone before he faced death.
For 13 years, he's sworn up and down, backwards and forwards, that he was innocent. And then all of a sudden...
After she got the phone, she said, well, say goodbye to Ted. And he apologized for all the bad he did. And I gave her a hug, and I said, you know, hey, we know that it wasn't right, of course, and that it's too bad it had to end like this.
If you're related to somebody like Bundy, that's traumatizing. It's an extreme betrayal because it's like this truly authentic emotional bond which Ted couldn't form. There is no reciprocity.
She was still processing all this in her mind and her heart. I can see her quite clearly saying that to me, like, well, that's it, you know what? This is it, you know.
He's still our son, no matter what he's done, and we love him very much.
Ted Bundy stirred hatred. An unprecedented crowd of hundreds started gathering before dawn. It took on a macabre circus-like atmosphere.
It was the morning people here have been anticipating for 10 bitter years. The Day State prison officials wired up the chair called Old Sparky and ordered Theodore Bundy to take his seat.
Ted's hour had come. At 7 a.m., he was led to the death chamber.
At that point, he was scared to death, believe me. Bundy was terrified. Nobody walks to their execution cool and calm.
Outside, the chanting crowd wanted vengeance. They watched for the lights to dim, the signal that the execution had begun.
Until the very last moment, no one could be sure Bundy didn't have a last trick up his sleeve.
You see the hand tightening, tighter and tighter.
The man suspected of brutally killing 36 women met the long, drawn-out demands of justice.
I started to cry for all his victims.
The Green River Killer started killing in 1982.
The identity of their killer remained a mystery until 2001.
The break in this case came when detectives were able to conclusively link DNA to 3 of the victims.
The first location is down that road down there. There it is. Isn't that a teeth?
Deborah Estes was my daughter, and she had just turned 15 years old.
This is something that is a life sentence. It lives with you forever.
I hope you're right in hell, son of a...
You've been watching Dead Curious, where every story hides a darker truth. Don't look away now. Hit like and subscribe and step deeper into the unknown.